why nature is so helpful for people. It's so honest. I just did a podcast with Laird Hamilton like a few days ago in Malibu. Okay. And that was one of the things we talked about is the consistency of nature. So he's doing these, extreme, heavy, crazy, ridiculous feats. And he trusts it more than the irrationality and unpredictability of a human being. Yeah. Because it's like that. It's like we're like humans they're a little spastic.
As I said, notoriously unreliable.
Why is that? I asked him this question as well. Yeah. If humans are congruent with nature, like they're a continuation of nature, what is it about humans that are so darn seemingly irrational? Or is there even such a thing as irrationality?
For sure. And I think it's sort of bedfellow words with unreliability, irregularity, inconsistency, whatever word you want to use, right? So I think that speaks to the fact that this particular paradigm, the organism that we are, the mind-body complex that we become misidentified with, is designed to survive, right? The brain is wired to predict and protect with the undercurrent of like, I just hope I survive, I make it. Now, that's deep in the DNA, right? Because you leave the cave with the fire and the comfort and the family to go and forage, get food, hunt. And in those days, there was a predictable, possible loss of life, right? That I might not survive, I might not come back.
Yeah.
So that's the real primal survival instinct. Today, it's like I had a couple too many pops at the golf course and I told my wife I'd be back for dinner at 6:30 and it's already 7 and it's now the primal desire is like, fuck.
What the hell is a pop?
A pop, a beer, a beverage.
Oh, you call it? I thought that was like Canadian for soda.
The soda pop, that's true, but in maybe British vernacular, it's like a pop, a beverage, a libation, a beverage.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, so anyway, so the point being in that particular scenario, the fear isn't for like literal life or death. Yeah. It's that I'm going to get chewed out by my husband, my wife, my partner for being late.
Right.
And so then it becomes more what I would consider the survival instincts today are much more emotional, psychological, right? They're not literal.
Yeah.
So one of my, I write in quotes, as you know, and I say, if it's not life-threatening, it's just ego-threatening.
Yeah.
And so I think, we live in a society that is just perpetually ego-threatened.
Is there any, as I was saying, the unpredictability, irrationality thing, is there anything that a human does that actually, if you understand that individual and their past and, their ancestry and just their environmental conditions and all the things, that actually is unpredictable or irrational? Or is everything actually a perfect expression of who they are at that point? Like everything could be perfectly predicted. There is nothing that's irrational, nothing that's unpredictable.
I don't think it can be predicted because even the individual themselves is oblivious to the subconscious constraints, limitations, right? The blind spots in lay terms. Yeah. So I don't think it can be predicted. It, however, can be, with sufficient listening and awareness, explained. Right? Subtle difference. So you can't even, based on your first question, you likely can't even predict your own behavior, right? Because you're like, well, I know that I want to do this, or why am I spending money on this, or why am I choosing this action, when in fact my conscious mind is saying that I want to have this particular objective achieved, but I know intellectually that what I'm currently doing isn't in keeping with that objective. Yeah. Right? So someone's like, oh, I want to lose weight, yet they're checking the fridge every 10 minutes and they know that the food that's in there isn't in keeping with, commensurate with their objective. Yeah. So that's where the lack of predictability comes in. But for me, with my work, if you go down to the subconscious narratives and the programs and dialogues that somebody's literally coded by, then their behavior becomes completely explainable.
So how does a person start to tap in, like under the hood of their subconscious or their behavioral patterns, and start to be able to take some empowerment with themselves, over themselves, within themselves? Yeah. What's the process with that?
Well, by starting with what we're sort of touching on, which is beautiful, which is noticing the delta, the differential between what I say I want to do and what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
Right? So where there's not synergy with that, I would equate power to being equivalent to, most people misunderstand it as someone in a position of authority, but power to me really speaks to those more esoteric conversations of like the magic of what it is to be a human, where we actually align with our words. Like if you really break it down to its most fundamental principles, I'm taking hot air. By virtue of having a vocal box, a vocal cord, I'm able to translate that into sound, which is really an extension of vibration, but in a language that you understand. And so if that sound is then commensurate and in keeping with the actions that I take to achieve the objective that I said I would, I literally took hot air and manifested it into reality. That's magic to me.
Yeah, it's like casting a spell, spelling a word.
Spelling abracadabra, as I speak, so I create, right? That's the Hebrew translation, like magic.
Yeah.
So that to me is equivalent to, it's sort of the formulation of what power equates to, right? If someone says, if you see a friend who's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start a business, lose weight, build a house, and then you see them 6 months later and none of that has transpired, as a loving, kind friend, you don't judge them, but you don't equally think that's someone you want to go to with your own objectives. They don't, they don't sort of add up to somebody that you would feel like, oh wow, they're a mover and shaker. They get shit done.
Yeah.
So like, how many people do that? Again, with all the compassion in the world, because that's the delta, to go back to your question of like, well, I said I wanted to do something, but I'm not doing it. That warrants investigation, as far as I'm concerned, if you want to be a powerful human being who's really up to something in life.
Yeah.